All right then, guys. First and foremost, inviting TechTalent to this taster session, so much appreciated and very much thanks for you. Okay. In terms of today then, we're going to do a little workshop with yourselves. My name's Sue Webster. I'm the lead trainer for TechTalent Academy, and in this webinar we've also been joined by Janice Ray, who's the founder of TechTalent Academy, along with Jane Fawkes, who is the lead trainer, head of learning. Do beg your pardon, Jane. And also along with myself, there's my fellow trainers, Satinder Sohal and Ashley Howells as well. So they've just joined us today, just to help out if there are additional questions, while I'm actually doing the session itself. All right then, guys. About TechTalent then. TechTalent was basically came about as a result of noting an underrepresentation of certain groups within the IT tech industry. I think pretty much most of us who have joined TechTalent have noticed that, whenever we've worked for organisations, there just tended to be particularly a distinct shortage of individuals who are of the BAME groupings, as well as anybody of LGBTs and so on. So our need pretty much came about as a result of wanting to have an opportunity to turn that around and to change that. What I've done just in terms of the presentation today is just taken a quote from the website itself, which I stand by and which I'm passionate about as well. And the quote basically says, "We believe passionately in the power of diversity to improve organisations and individual lives. So we're creating academies that help businesses to build diverse tech teams and individuals with underrepresented backgrounds, so that it gives them an opportunity really to build rewarding tech careers." And I feel that that really sums up who we are as an organisation. So I do hope you guys gain a lot in terms of what we're doing today. As well as ourselves as an organisation, in particular our Bristol office, we're based in Birmingham, we're based in Bristol. At Bristol, we're offering a range of courses as well as Birmingham. For the Bristol course in particular, we are offering the FullStack course, which is in relation to this workshop tonight. And based on that FullStack course, you're given the opportunity to have explore and gain experience of the programming languages which are currently displayed on my slide. So you can see from here that we've got Python fundamentals, HTML, cascading style sheets in terms of web design, course on pandas, one-day course on NumPy, Agile, Ruby, C++, and so on. What I've got displayed is the current way that we're delivering given the current lockdown circumstances. So our courses at the moment will typically run around 12 weeks. If we do come out of lockdown, hopefully sooner than later, then what we would be looking at would be approximately a 10-week course for that FullStack course. The main thing to bear in mind with regards to this is how we're going to approach the workshop tonight, okay, which brings me nicely onto my next slide. Now, in terms of this, we are offering tonight a taster session of the Python element of the course. And what we're going to be doing is offering a competition, and the competition, the aim is to give you guys the opportunity to be offered a free place on our FullStack course. In line with tonight, and as you guys work on it, what we're looking at doing is that you guys can either submit a 1-minute video which will basically explain why you should have a place on the course and why you would want a career in tech. But this is optional, guys, so either a 1-minute video, or if you don't want to do a video, you can also submit a 100 to 200 word summary of those key questions. So why you would want a free place on the FullStack course, and also why you might want a career in tech. Okay, so along with that submission, so either a video or a 1 to 200 word summary. We're also going to get you guys to submit a text-based version of a Python adventure game. Now, please, for those of you that have never used Python before, please don't worry, because hopefully I'll equip you for tonight to be able to do this and still, you know, live your dream. Okay, so I'm hopefully going to stagger the introduction to Python to where you can do those two. So basically, I will be available as a point of contact if you need any technical support over the next couple of weeks or so. And my email I've listed on this slide. So if you do have, well, this is being recorded, which is cool, because if not, I would say make a note of my email in terms of just touching base with me. If you get stuck or you're running some code, it's not doing what it ought to, and you just need an extra pair of eyes to have a look at what you've prepared in terms of the adventure game. Okay. Once you're happy with your entry, you would need then to submit either the video or the summary by email to the engagement@byep.org.uk. What I would I'll be sort of emphasising this throughout the session tonight. Unfortunately, if, for example, you prepare your adventure game using REPL IT, which was the link in the chat, it might be worth you actually highlighting all of your code, copying it, and feel free to either paste it into a Word document if you have Word, or you can click onto print screen to do a snapshot of the code itself. Attachments in terms of the code doesn't work in most of the emails. So if you use Outlook, for example, it thinks that you're trying to hack into somebody's system and it will reject it for you. Okay, I will be reminding you of that as we progress through the course tonight. All right. The closing date for this competition is going to be Wednesday, the 6th of May, and it's going to be the latest 5 p.m. Okay, so entries will not be accepted. The official line entries will not be accepted after that, but the deadline would be this particular date. Okay, so the 6th of May at 5 p.m. Okay, after that, shortlisted candidates will then have an interview with a person from Verbasa and TechTalent, and this will be done via Zoom. Okay, so if you get shortlisted after this stage, we will contact you. From there then, we've got a few weeks to have a look through all of your wonderful work, and then on the 1st of June, the winner will be announced. Okay, so Babasa will announce the winner on the 1st of June, and hopefully then the one lucky user will then be ready to actually start the course about the 10th of August. Okay. Before I move on, any questions? So do feel free to put your hands up if you do want any questions. Excellent. Okay. If that is okay, then I will start to move on. So what I'm going to do now is go straight into the course itself. All right. Okay then. Now, as far as today goes, what we'll be looking at will be, again, for the purpose of those of you who've never coded before, I'm just going to briefly explain what we mean by a programming language, what is a program, in particular, use it. I'll demonstrate to you the hallowed ground of writing your first line of code, and it might be worth you trying that out, you know, once we do finish the session, before you get into the nitty-gritty of doing your competition coding. Okay, so hello world is just us introducing to you how to write your first bit of code. We're then going to just take it up a little bit in terms of how we get people to interact with a computer. So that was under the area of user input. And then a last little chunk of me sort of talking a lot would be relating to if statements and conditions, what they are, how we use them, and how they can be quite a handy tool whenever we're actually doing coding of any sort. Okay, guys. Right, first things first then. What is Python? Now, Python itself is a programming language. It's an example of a programming language. For us, from the educational background, we tend to refer to it as the teaching language. It's the one that most students would tend to start with whenever they're thinking about a career or going into programming. Okay. The language itself is classified as belonging to a collection of languages which are referred to as high-level languages. All that basically means is they're used regularly, and it allows the developer to do a lot more things with them. Okay, so what I've done on this slide is I've listed some of the examples of high-level languages, such as BASIC, you've got C, you've got C++, and you've got Python. Included in there would be things like Java, it would be things like CSS and so on. The main thing to think about with regards to that term is just the fact that it's something that a person can actually build a system with, okay? Which brings me nicely to when you hear the phrase batted about of programming language. A lot of the time people might say, well, what is that? You know, what's a programming language? And essentially all it is just a set of words, a set of instructions. It could be a set of rules that a person would type in to interact with the computer, and it will then enable the computer to perform specific tasks. So that could be as simple as writing a set of instructions whereby a user would pick up their switch on their screen on the smartphone and enter a password on the screen, and then the user interface will suddenly come up. All of that would have started with a set of words or instructions in order to allow that computer to carry out that particular task. Another example is you're hearing a lot of the phrases now of a smart TV, a smart meter, and so on. And pretty much most of our devices in our homes now would be made up of some kind of programming language. Okay, so when you hear that term, it's really the software that we use in order to talk to that computer and to enable it to then act on any instructions that we put. Now, in each programming language, you would tend to have a unique set of keywords, and the words that we give to that is syntax or syntax. So the syntax is the language that's specific to a particular programming language software. So the way that I tend to picture this is the fact that, you know, with me now, I mean, I have got my awful Brummie accent for you guys down in Bristol, and there's certain phrases which would be very limited to Birmingham, hence the phrase of us being yam yam, and, you know, I've been to the shops, you know, and all of that. So it's specific to us up here. It is unique to Birmingham. I wouldn't expect anyone from Bristol to come out with, and if we were to put it into computing terms, then we could probably extend that by saying that the syntax for me living in Birmingham would be a lot different to the syntax or the language that you guys would use down in Bristol. Okay, so you'll hear these technical terms, but essentially they are just the ways that we would interact with the different lots of software. Okay, so key things with this is that each language has its own version of it. Now, it's a bit of a hands up moment for you guys now. I'm just going to put onto my screen the three lots of very different looking programming languages. I don't mind if, actually I might just get you to pop your hands up, but as my title entails, you've got three kinds of languages here. You've got one from assembler, you've got one from C++, and you've got one from Python. For you guys as you are right now and looking at these three, anyone would like to share which one they perhaps might be drawn more towards if I suddenly was to drop on you and say, hey, I need you to just write one line of code? Which one would you be drawn to? Would you kind of be attracted to assembler? Would you be attracted to C++? Or would you be attracted to Python?
Looks like we're getting a lot of feedback in the chat, so
Oh, right. Okay. Let me try and see on the chat. I am just.
It's looking pretty unanimous from here.
Is it? Is it mainly? Let me just click onto that. See if I can bring that up. Is it mainly Python?
It's Python, and then someone,
Yes.
Anisu, is that the right pronunciation? Just put, I want no parts of assembler. Or I want no part of assembler.
Yes.
So very
I
strong
would
feelings, clearly.
200% agree with you. Now, I'm glad I've got a unanimous answer here, guys, because I personally, I look at assembler and it just it triggers me to be truthful when I think back to my uni days and I was looking at different languages. But as is implied here, really, Python is the way to go forward, and that's why it is referred to as the teaching language, because as you can see from it, you can see that it's kind of understandable to us. We can relate to it. We can see print and say to ourselves, well, print, I've heard of print before. So that means I might be more inclined to be able to do something with that. So brilliant in terms of that, guys, because that would make a lot of sense in terms of going for Python. Moving on then, with everything, whether you learn Java, whether you learn Python, assembler, or C++, there's a rite of passage which most of us do. For the sake of time, I was originally going to get you guys to practice this within your browsers, but given that it's obviously a webinar and the internet speeds and everything, I'm just going to demonstrate this for you. If you're a geek, and pretty much anyone that loves to code in any way, this would be the main way that you would start. Okay, so what I will try to do, I'm just going to quickly come out of my PowerPoint, and then I'm going to come onto the Replit for you, and I'm hoping again that everybody can see that okay. Brilliant, and it's just loading up as well. Now, I'll just, before I go through the code itself, I'll explain the way that this looks. Okay, so the link that I sent through earlier, you should hopefully come up with something like this. And Replit or Replit is a browser-based compiler. And especially when you're learning to code for the first time, or if you want to experiment with it, this is probably a nice one to go for, as opposed to downloading and using Python. Both are fine, and it's just really what you would prefer. Okay, now with regards to this, although it's amazing, there is a downside, and that's for the fact that with me doing this tonight, as soon as I click onto X, which I'm not going to do, I'm going to lose everything that I've done here. So again, I'm going to be reminding you about the fact that, you know, if you have a bit of code, we can always highlight it. I'm going to do Control and C to copy on my keyboard, but I can right click and do copy there as well. And if you notice down the bottom for me, I've got a Word document, and I can just as easily copy my code into there. Okay, I'm going to be, again, I'll repeat, and forgive me for repeating, but it's just because we're using this as a compiler, it's just an important point for us to go through. Number two,
Sorry,
then, with
Sue,
this.
could I interrupt you just for 1 second? Do you
Yeah.
have another window up apart from the PowerPoint? Because all I can see right now is your PowerPoint window. Is that just me?
Ah, right. Thank you. Let me see if I can. It's Zoom, I think, because at the moment, let me do new share. Yeah, I think I'll need to just go into new share.
Okay,
And
thanks, Sue.
is that better?
If you,
Yeah. Can you guys see the browser okay now?
oh yes, there we go. Yeah, we're there.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, there's going to be a bit of a delay with regards to me broadcasting as well, so apologies for that. And it's always the way when you use different webinars, different places. So, okay, so we have here the browser, and let me just show you that again then, guys. So this is Replit. We've got two sections there. At the moment, I've got my code that I've written there. I can actually click and highlight that, and either press Control and C on my keyboard, or I can right click and copy to where that code can then go to a Word document, which you probably may not see because of the fact that I'd have to literally broadcast that and then paste it into any document that I need for there. Okay, so that's the first point that I'll emphasize as I go along. Number two then, Python tends to be, although you've got an option to where you can write code here. So I could type in code here. The better practice, and the one that I'll sort of suggest that we adopt for tonight, is making use of two sections of Python. We've got the bit that we can write our code in, which is known as idle, or the interdevelopmental area or environment. And then you've got the area, which is the dark color on the screen, where the code gets executed, and you can see whether or not your code works. Very typically, that dark area is known as shell. And that can, the best way to picture it is when you see those geek movies and you've got the two screens and, you know, you've got somebody frantically writing on one side of the screen and then they look to the other. Okay, now the rite of passage for us relates to this first line of code. So the first bit, if I just take out the information that's there, is this particular command. And this command is called print. Now print allows us to display anything that's in shell, so in that dark area there. And with print, if the way to remember print really is a bit like when you have a printer at home and you print something. So whatever is displayed on your screen, you'd send it to print, it gets displayed in your printer. So that's one of the ways that I tend to remember this particular command. If I need to show something on this screen here, then I know that I need to use print as a command. Okay. Now inside print tends to come with two brackets, and it's inside the brackets that we would need to actually type our code. Now, I was in a session earlier, and there is a mathematical term for the bracket, but me being me tonight at some minutes to 6, I am awful at pronouncing it. It's parenthesis, which I think I've done it for the first time right now, which is good. But the other name for brackets is parenthesis. And that helps back to the fact that Python is made by mathematicians, or was made by mathematicians. Okay, so it's inside that we would write our code. If we need to write a sentence, the sentence must be in speech marks. So I'm going to just put, or if we need to write a phrase or a word, it has to be in speech marks. So I'm going to write the first bit of hello world. If you guys are happy to actually practice this, feel free to go along and do that as well. Just looking at some of your pictures there, it's good to see that you are sort of having a go. Okay, and then basically I've got to make sure with that phrase that there are speech marks around it. Okay, now near the top of this browser screen you can see the word run, and that's, if you download Python, the equivalent of that is F5 if you use keyboard shortcuts on the sort of desktop version, or else you can go to, if I just quickly go to run on the desktop version and then run again, and it will run it for you. Replit is nice because we can just click onto that button there. So as soon as I click on to run, you might see a bit of a delay on your screens, but eventually on the shell, you will see the phrase that I've written come up again for you. Okay, so you can see hello world there. I can then go back and I can edit this. I'll put a very well-known fact of myself. I can actually change what's in the speech marks, and then as soon as I click on to run, it will eliminate what was there previously, and then it will replace it. Okay, so it will actually put that in there. Later on, I'll show you a combination of how that also looks as well. But the rite of passage for most future programmers is one of the first few codes that you're going to look at writing, or you may write, would be hello world. The history behind that stems from a programmer writing the first script in 1972. And it's always been a tradition then that if you are there and you've never used Python before, just have that moment and then just take a few minutes to savor the fact that you've written your first line of code and it comes up as hello world and not Sue is greedy. So I'm just going to do run and then have that come up again for us right there. Okay, now what I'm going to need to do is, again, I'm just going to go to new share to go back to my PowerPoint a little moment. So Now, before I move on, is that okay, guys, in terms of the very first code? So we've got print, open bracket, and then whatever phrase we put in there, we've got to put it around those speech marks around it, close brackets, and then we do run. Okay. All right then, guys. I'm going to move on then. Is everyone seeing my PowerPoint again? Just a quick thumbs up if you are. Brilliant. Okay. To move on then, what about if we need to actually get a user to interact? So again, watching my son downstairs, he loves using a software called Scratch, and you can play some sort of games in there. The one thing that frustrates a young coder like him is the fact that he gets a bit bored if it's just a case of displaying something. So if you're going to just print sentences, I'm hungry, I'm cool, and so on, using the print command, does seem to get a little bit boring after a while. Now, what we've got in Python is two concepts, okay? And you can see with this presentation, for example, as I run across that first line here, we've got that same print command, and it looks as though it's going to display what is your name. That phrase is in the speech marks, it's in the brackets, and if I just ran that on its own, it would come up on Replit in terms of that display. But it's the second part that I want us to look at. Now, the thing with that first line here is that command there is going to display content in the brackets or the parentheses. I'm going to continue to say that word. So it will display whatever is in those brackets there. The next line down, there's two areas that I just want to go to and introduce to you. The first little bit here is known as a variable. And a variable is like, I always liken it to my handbag. It's a container. It will store and contain any information that we have the user put into the computer system. So a variable, another example of a variable would be, for example, if you do gaming and you see the word score at the top of your screen, that's an example of a variable. Whenever you're there and you raise your points in terms of whatever you're playing, the score adjusts and it increases, or if you get hit a few times, your score reduces. So variable will store whatever you need to get from that user, and that's the beginnings of our interaction. Now you'll see on that next line that we've got an equal symbol, which mathematically we would think would mean is the same as. In Python, Python doesn't understand that as meaning that. Python would see this symbol here, and it would interpret that to mean whatever follows that symbol there, I need to store it in this variable that has the name. So we call that is assigning something or adding something to a variable. Okay, so I'm just taking a little bit of time with regards to that, because whenever we do see that, when it's got lines of code, it's going to mean slightly different to what we would normally be used to seeing if we say 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, so in our case here, that it's a way of assigning whatever comes here to that variable. Now, if I click again with regards to this, we can see another command, and this is where we've got our user input. So the same way that we've got print and we've got the brackets, we've also now got a new command for us, and that's known as input, and we've got the brackets there as well. Now you'll see on the next slide that I'll show you that on its own here will prompt the user to be able to type something in. And as soon as they type something in, it gets stored under name. Okay. And then finally, the next line under that, we're basically instructing Python to display the phrase hello. And then we've got that variable, which if you notice hasn't got speech marks around it. Okay. And the little bit in the middle here is a plus symbol, which represents the fact that we are adding these two areas together. And that is known as concatenation. So it will combine, or it will join, these two areas together. Now there's one thing as I move on to my other slide. Programmers, by their very nature, are quite lazy people. Well, I am. I'm quite lazy, so I wouldn't want to have 3 lines of code. I'd sooner want to be able to chunk it down into 2. And with the input command, it is possible to do that. So if I went to the previous slide, I've got 3 loads of typing that I would need to do. Whereas instead, I can actually combine those first 2 lines into one command, if you notice that I've done there. So again, I've got the variable that's going to store whatever the user puts in, and then I've got the input where it's asking them a question as well. So it is possible where you don't need to do what we've got previously here. We can actually just chunk it down to where we just got 2 lines of information as well. Okay, they both do the same thing, so it will allow a user to be able to input something which then gets stored in that area, which is the variable, and then underneath that we can display a phrase and then whatever it is that has been stored. So let's go and have a look at how that looks. Okay. So again, if I go back to here, and if I go to, I've got the 2 examples with regards to this. So my first line that I've got here, I've got the print command and I've got what is your name. Now we can then expect the user to put something in. And then if you notice from a PowerPoint slide, here's that 3rd line there. So it's actually got, I'm just going to take this out a second, it's actually got display in speech marks, hello, joined with that variable that's called name. Now let me just run that for you, and so you can see what it looks like. So at the moment it's ran that first line. I'm now going to type in my name and then I'm going to press enter. And as soon as I've pressed enter, Python then understands that it can move on to the 3rd line, and now it's displaying hello Sue. Okay, now let's have a look at that other one where you've got, oops, no, let me go back to add this back in. And this is the 2nd version, so I'm going to run them both together for you. So again, it's prompting the first one, so I can put Sue in there. I press enter, which gives Python the indication that it is ready to do the next line, so it's done hello Sue. Then for line 5, it's starting again now, and it has, I'm going to put in, let's put in Harry. Now if you notice, I've still got the same variable name, I've got the word name there, but as soon as something changes, which is when I press enter, Python's only going to remember what's been entered in. So at the moment I've changed that variable called name, and it now contains Harry as opposed to Sue. Okay, any questions so far? Is that okay, guys?
Remember to just raise your hand if you're like, oh, I'm lost.
Excellent. Brilliant. It does sound. So what I will do then, guys, is I will move on. Okay. Now, what I will do, just double checking that I've got. Okay, just thumbs up again if you can see my presentation. Excellent, thank you. All right then. So I will just, I don't want to spend too long. However, I do want you to kind of practice what we've kind of done so far. So I'd like you to have a go at writing a program that will display a joke. Now the clue is in that first line. So you've got something to display the question of the joke. You've got to give the opportunity for the user to put a response in. And then you've got to do a print command to display the punchline. Before I get you to start on this, this was a learning experience with me to ask a 9-year-old for suggestions, because he was begging me to ask all of you guys to do a knock-knock joke, and that the user would put who's there, then you guys would then put Europe, and then we can all know what the punchline would be. So that was been formally rejected, I'll hasten to add. And basically what I'll do after a few minutes of you guys trying this is I'll just go through the solution. Okay, if there are no further questions, if you go and click onto your REPL it, and then similar to before, I'm going to just give you some commands to help you. So remember, you could do a command with print, and then in the speech marks you could do why did the chicken cross the road in the speech marks, close brackets. The next line, you're going to have a go at having, you could use answer, you could use any phrase so long as it's not a two-phrase thing. So if it's just one word like question, answer, and so on, that will be your variable. Then you're going to have the assigning and then the input command, and you can either do this or you could do print brackets with the phrase in and then have nothing contained in your input. Purely up to you, and go, I would say go with what you're comfortable with. Okay, and then after that you could do a print and then the punchline. Okay, what I will do is I will just give you guys a couple of minutes. Let me just stop share. If I can, I will then be able to see. That's there we go. All right then, so I won't remember with this, I'm going to be giving you the answers to this. So if you still need a little bit of guidance, then that's perfectly fine. But just a couple of minutes, just for you guys to have a go with this. Because I can see the group chat again now, as soon as a percentage of you are done and you're happy, what I'll do is I'll begin sharing my screen again, and then I'll go through the answers with you. Okay. So if you click onto the REPL it link, and then you should see a screen similar to what I had before. And then what we'll do, if I just bring that back up again, there we go. And then what you can do then is actually have a little go at that. Okay, so let me just start putting that in. So I could do it this way. And the hardest thing for this is the joke. Okay, so that's the only thing that would be. Cross the road. And then just to give you a little bit of a help if you are trying this out yourselves as well. This could be one way to do this. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll just pause a little bit, and then if we just get an indication then that people have tried it a little bit, and even if it goes wrong, don't worry, because I'll go through the solution for you as well. Okay. There we go. And just have a think then of what we would do in terms of that. And then what I'll need to do, I'm just going to stop sharing again, just to. And then feel free to interact with me on chat as well. So just put some comments in as to what do you think so far. Okay, so I'm actually looking at the chat now. So yeah, just let me know what you think so far, or if your code works. That'll be awesome to see as well.
So Hannah's got a question. I'll just
yeah.
Or Hannah might prefer a direct message if someone's willing to do that.
Okay.
Like Satinder or Jane, if you're willing to message Hannah privately, just to see what her issue is.
Okay. Eddie, I can see your message that you're getting an invalid syntax on yours right now. Spaces do make a difference, yeah. If you do find that, and also don't capitalize your commands. So print would have to be all lowercase. It would be very tempting to do print with a capital P, but don't put any spaces in what you're typing. So when you do it, if I share the bit again, if you notice with mine, I don't tend to put spaces in mine unless it is within these speech marks. If it is within the speech marks, it just looks a little bit more tidier when I do run it. Okay, so thanks for that question, Eddie. And then, yeah, and then as soon as you have tinkered around with it a little bit, just let me know in the chat that you've got it. Eddie, also, just let me know if that's worked okay. If you've taken your spaces out, brilliant, okay, brill. Hey, awesome. That's brilliant to see, Eddie. That's great. So Eddie has got his working. And then, yeah, for the rest of you, just give us a nod in terms of if you've got that little bit of a joke working. If this was a longer session, I would have asked you to share them with me just so I could get my son back. But as it is, I won't do that on this occasion. And what I might do as well is, if you're finding that you could do with maybe seeing the solution, if you start to put your hands up for me, and then that way, then it will help me to actually move on. Excellent. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Hadi. So for the rest of you then, if it's fantastic, thank you. And then if you're done, if you do like the others in the chat, and then just indicate that you're done, that'll be amazing for me. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Fantastic. Brill. Okay. I think I'm looking at about 50-50 in terms of people who might need to see the solution and those who are done. So if it's okay with you guys, what I'm going to do is I'll go back to sharing my screen, and I will go through that solution now. Okay, so again, just thumbs up if you can see my screen okay. And what I will do now is go through that solution. So you can see with regards to what I've written that I've got print, I've got no spaces, it's all lowercase, and then I've got the open brackets. Inside that is the speech marks, and I've got, why did the rubber chicken cross the road? I've then got to have somewhere to where the user can actually type that in. So I've got a variable called answer, and I'm assigning to that whatever the user puts in. And we're enabling the user to put something in by using input and then brackets. And it could be they might put, I don't know. Okay, then but underneath that, I'm going to put the print command, then I can put the speech marks, and then I can put the punchline. And I can't spell. I'm so sorry for the really awful joke. Okay, so the punchline is there because he needed to stretch his legs. So when I click on to run now, and you can see that it does the first line, and now it's waiting for me to type something in. So I can put, I don't know. And then when I press enter, it then executes the third line, and which says, because he needed to stretch his legs. Okay, guys, if you have managed to do that, very well done, because you've just got the building, half of your building blocks now in terms of this adventure game that you need to do. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is go back to the presentation, and are there any questions of those of you that just needed a bit of help with regards to that? If you don't mind putting your hands up, and then we'll be able to help out with regards to that. Brill. Okay. What I will do then is, with the presentation working, I will just go then to the possible answers. So some of you may have done it the way that I showed you guys, and then others of you, you may have just gone to the point where you just use the input. And just to emphasize, either way is fine. So whichever way you're comfortable with, run with that one. Okay. Right then, guys, other half of this now before we get to where we can work on this. Conditional statements. We tend to have that question of that, yes, we can get users to interact, but what happens if they give more than one answer? How can we get the computer to check what to do as a result of a question being asked or a response being given? This is where the term conditional statements comes in. It's a programming term which is given to when the computer will act after checking whether a certain condition has been met by whatever the user has put in. It can also, if you do any further reading with regards to this, it can be referred to as an if and a then statement, and also as well it can be referred to as if statements. For us as humans, we do this all the time. I'm not sure how Bristol was weather-wise, but for Birmingham we had rain all day today. If it's raining outside, I'm not going to go out. If it's sunny outside, I will go out. And that kind of decision making is something that we do naturally as humans. But how would we write this then in Python? Now, this is a teeny bit more meatier, and so I'll just verbally go through this, show you an alternative for those who may have done this before, and then we'll see examples on Replit. Okay, the syntax can be structured as follows. So we've got a variable called sky. We've got the assigning it to some sort of input. So we're expecting the user to put an answer into with regards to this. We've got input, what color is the sky? Sometimes I put a space after there, and because it's PowerPoint, ignore the way that that is there. It's in Python, it's just 2 double speech marks, okay, or 1 single speech mark. The if statement or the conditional statement starts here. It's a lowercase if, and on a new line we would tend to write if whatever's contained in this variable called sky, and this double 2 equals here means that we're actually comparing it, so it is equal to blue. And then you'll notice with the syntax that we've got the colon right next to it. So if the variable, whatever's contained in that variable, is equal to blue, underneath then we want to display you're correct. If it's not, we want to display I don't think so. The things to look out for a conditional statement is the indent. So typically with most Python editing software, it would do it automatically. But if it doesn't, and you click onto enter to go onto a new line after blue, you can click onto your tab, and then that will produce the indent enough to where you can write your display command. Okay. Another way to consider this is for those a little bit higher up. So if you're new to Python, concentrate on this side of my screen. If you'd like a little bit more meat, this is where we take it a little bit further. So with this, if you notice that first line, we've still got that there. What colour is the sky? But we're giving 3 options there now, and we can use an if statement in a similar way. So the syntax would mean that we're sort of saying, well, if it's this, then do this action, or else if it's this, then do something else, or else if it's this, we're going to do something completely different, and then otherwise everything else we're going to just have this down at the bottom. Okay, what I'm going to do is show that in terms of Replit. Okay, so if I go now to, just wait for the Zoom to disappear a bit. There we go. So how that looks in reality then is I've got that first line there. So if I run this, it's executed that first line, and because it's input and we're asking a question, it's waiting for that answer there. So what colour is the sky? If I put in blue, it will do its check. So it's checking that whatever's contained in that variable called sky, if it's equal to blue, I need to display this back to the user, and that's exactly what it's done. Okay, just going to run it again. So what colour is the sky? And if I was to put anything else, so if I put chips, then Python will compare whether it's equal to blue, and if it isn't, it's going to put the alternative answer down. I don't think so. Okay, so that is the simpler way of doing an if statement. If you notice on the right hand side of my screen, I have the little bit more meatier one, and that's where we use a command else if. Okay, so if I run this again, we've got that first top line, we've got that variable called sky, the input, what is the colour of the sky, and we're giving those users the option, they can either put red, green or blue. So if they put blue, so I'm going to type in blue, it says you are correct. So it's checked through all of these, it's equal to blue, what's stored in sky, so it's going to print this. I'm just going to run it again now. And if I put in red, it checks through, is the whatever's in contained in sky blue? No, it isn't. Else, is whatever contained in sky red? Yes, it is. So it'll put I don't think so. And in the same way, if I was to do green, now if I put anything else in that, it will come up with the response that whatever's put there. So I've just put sausage in because it's tea time, but you can see then that because it's not red, because it's not blue, and because it's not green, then when we do scripts a bit like this, we can catch any potential answer that a user can put in. Now that'll be handy for our adventure game, because it could be that somebody might try and, if you give your mate your game to actually try it out, they may turn around and put something completely different. That's in there for you. Okay. Now what I'm going to just do is, again, just pause it a little bit there and just see if there are any questions.
So I think there is one question from Ishola in the chat box.
Yeah.
They just asked, what function is the brackets parentheses? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the parenthesis is part of a command. So you'll notice that, in my example here, you've noticed that the brackets are with print. So when we did print before, we had the brackets attached to it. And then also with this one now, we're using the input command, and it's got the brackets there. So if you picture it as meaning that it's connected with the commands that, whatever command it is that you're using. In our case today, it's print and it's input. Okay, so imagine it as best way would be to perhaps to just demonstrate that. So if you imagine that I have this under here and I was to type print there, as soon as I begin to do the brackets, can you see that the brackets are attached to the command itself rather than it being viewed in an isolated way? Does that make sense? Is that okay? Then in the chat, if I've answered it okay for you, just let us know. Okay. Alrighty. Now what I'm going to do is just head back to the presentation. Okay. And if there are no other questions, we are coming to the penultimate bit now, guys. So I've just introduced some of the aspects that we have whenever we use a conditional statement. So you start always with your variable and your user input. So you can name that variable any way that you want. Just keep everything lowercase. Don't have any phrases. Okay, so just keep to one word. You've got assigned to, and then the input with the parentheses, and then the speech marks, whatever you want to put into there, if you so choose. Okay, remember you could do it the other way as well. Note the syntax for the conditional statement. If something equals a condition, note that it has a colon afterwards. Okay, so for that next line then, it starts to check if whatever's contained in that variable is both equal, because it tells Python that you need to see if it's matching or not. And then note as well, in terms of the syntax, that because it's a phrase and it's a word, it has to be in speech marks. So we then follow that with the colon. When we press enter after that, it should automatically default and shift down. It will print, you are correct. And then in our example where there's more than one option, you will see that instead of just having if and then else, we can put multiple else ifs, and picture that as like, okay, here's another choice that you can check, or here's another choice that you can check. So the elif or else if enables us to do that. Okay, and in most cases with regards to that then, what you will then see is with these else ifs and the else, remember we've got the colon after it as well. Okay. Any questions before I go through the competition challenge?
Remember, you can raise your hand or you can just type it in the chat box and someone can message you directly if that's helpful.
Okay. All right then, guys. Now, what I will do, I'm going to take just a bit of time in terms of the challenge itself. So there we go. So this is the challenge then as part of our competition. Remember, you're going to be telling us why you want to go on the course, why you want a career in tech. And then based on what we showed today, you're going to have a go. And please don't make it all complicated and don't adopt like, you know, the examples that I'm about to show you sort of thing, because what's needed, I suppose, on our courses is that positivity to just crack on and have a go. Okay, so which brings me nicely to our task. Okay, with this particular task, we are going to create what we call a text adventure game. The way that I would describe that is a bit like going back to primary school when you would have a book and the book would basically tell a story. You're not going to tell a story, I hasten to add, but basically you'd come to a point in the story where, for example, it might say you've come to a haunted house and there's a door, you're greeted with a door. Do you open or do you run? And then whatever you choose, or whatever the user chooses, they're then met with another question. Now we're going to do and have a go at a simplified version of that, where we make use of our print command, where it displays. We make use of our input command, where we allow the user to put an answer in. And then we make use of our conditional statements. So if a user puts, for example, yes, something gets displayed. If a user was to put no, something else gets displayed. Now, what I've purposely done with regards to this task is I've ordered the lines of code in line with the instructions that we've got here. So the first one, for example, where it says greet the user and ask for their name, just quickly tap into your chat what you reckon the two commands would be that you might use there. And then Zoe, if you don't mind just giving one or two of those responses for us. So for step one, we've got to display a statement where it greets the user and asks for their name. So which two of those commands that we did at the beginning would be your two that you might start with there.
Don't be shy. No one's going to kick you out if you get them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. One begins with a P.
Okay. Got one answer.
And
Let's see if anyone else is going to venture an answer before I start calling them out. Like I said, not going to get banished.
yeah. No. It's a lot to take in for tonight as well. So, yeah.
Oh, interesting. So we've got a few answers. We've got
Yeah.
input and print, or Hattie's put name equals input.
Okay, yeah.
Print and input.
Well done,
Laura's
Hattie.
put print and answer. Catherine's put print and input.
Okay, lovely. Yeah. Happy with those. Well done, guys. The two commands would indeed be print and it would indeed be input. As Hattie had pointed out as well, remember we've got our variable. So you'd start with answer equals input. So well done, brilliant. Thank you guys for that. That's a relief. I've actually conveyed it all right. So the next stage then, it would be whether you'd want to ask them to play the name. Now what I'm going to just do is, I'll read through all of these in a second. I do want to actually show you roughly what that might look like. I can't obviously give you the answers, but I can sort of show you what it might similarly look like. Okay, so if I go to Replit and I click onto this one here and I run it, you know step one where it says somebody greets you and then they ask what your name is. I've got a version of that in terms of what's running at the moment. So if you notice, I've started with the display where it says, hi, my name is Sue. And I've then moved on to write my input, which I've put on a new line. So although that task has it all in one go in one, you can see that you've got your two lines there. So it's asking for a name. And let's just put, I'll put Keith. So in my case here, feel free to play around and be as extravagant as you want with regards to this command. So in this example, it's asking, would you like to play a game? And I'm now going to type in yes. And before I click on to enter, we are just at line 4 on that command that's there. So now when I press enter, it is checking if the answer is yes, which is what I put yes, it needs to do something. Now, if you notice, I've got that same variable because I want to ask another question, which is the point of our adventure game. Because as soon as somebody responds with something, we can come back and ask a question. So I've got a variable called play, I've got another input, and I've got which is best, chocks or toffee. So if I put chocks, what we're looking at then is it's going to line 7, it's going to check it. And then it's saying, if it's chocks, input, yummy, me too. Do you want 1 or 2? And can you begin to see, guys, how this adventure game starts to build? It starts to get more and more. So do you want 1 or 2? If I type in 2, Python's going to look to check if it's 2. If it's 1, it'll be something, or else if it's 2, it's got to do something else. So I've typed in 2 and we're looking at line 20. And then very typically Sue, but I don't want to give you 2. Okay, so you can see how Python will look at your adventure game and you can make it as complicated or as easy as you would like. Okay, going back to the task itself. So if you are doing Python for the first time, then have a go at those 4 steps that are there, okay, if you can. Okay, if you're doing it for the first time and it's like, not 100% sure, please do not worry, because the fact that you get it working and the fact that you can say why you want to have a career in tech, it's that problem solving that you'll have done after this very, very short course today that will give you a good run-ins then in terms of like us looking at what you produce. Okay, if you are more comfortable and it's come back to you with Python, I'm going to just move to an extra extension task. And that would be for those of you where, thankfully, and thank you. You've taken what I've given you tonight. You're like, I remember that. And then you can do something a little bit more complex. So try to add more questions to your adventure game. How would you then limit the amount of times that a person can attempt your games? Okay, so this is like those of you, I think of that few, it was the 20 or 30% of you who was like, yeah, I'm doing it now, or I've done it at A level or GCSEs. How would you limit the amount of times a person can attempt your games? So in your cases only, have a go at using a loop that will only allow 3 attempts of the game. Okay, again, with regards to this, and if I can see where it is, with regard to this, I was going to try and hopefully show you another example of what we can do there, but not a problem. Yeah, it's coming up. Just bear with me one sec. What I'm just going to quickly share with you is, although it's not in REPL it, I will just show you an example of how you can kind of take it a little bit further. So this is done in the Python desktop version. But again, if I do Sue for there, hello Sue, the aim of today's game is for you to use an adventure, to go on an adventure by answering some questions you want to play. Yes. Okay, so you can see with regards to the task itself, how that might look. Okay, so you've reached a crossroads, do you turn left or right? If I put left, you come across a 4-meter python. Do you pet it or you run? If I put pet, you now have a pet python. Okay, so that's just a nice version of a way that you can do this adventure game. I will leave it up to you. Imagine me, I've had enough with my kids, I'm nearly stir crazy with all the lockdown. If you make that game interesting enough to where I can have a really good laugh with it, then that will influence in terms of me looking at this. Okay, so let your imagination run free with regards to the type of questions you want to put in, and then also just the way that you ask those questions. Okay, and again, if you notice with regards to this, ignore these little bits here. I'm a very sad geek, and for me as well, it's been a few weeks since I used Python, so I had to like practice it. Practice does make perfect with regards to this, so ignoring those little commands there. In essence, if you notice the way that things are lined up, if you are at that top end where you're looking at else, elifs or elifs, else, and so on, just be careful of your lining up. Okay. Any questions, guys? Apologies that it's overrun just a little bit, but hopefully I've equipped you enough to where you can have a go with regards to this. Let me just stop sharing my screen. Brilliant. I was just seeing your answers now as well. That's fantastic, guys. What I will hopefully do as well is I am available for you to email me if, as in Eddie's case, for example, when he would just have that query, feel free to do print screens and pasting it into a document. And then if anything goes pear-shaped for you, I'll be happy, more than happy to have a look and just help you along with regards to this. Okay, remember the deadline is the 6th of May, Wednesday the 6th of May at 5 p.m. and you'll need to go to the engagement email to submit your written or your video as well as your adventure game. Okay, I do hope you've enjoyed tonight, guys. It's been really nice working with you. It's the first time me doing a webinar using Zoom, so I was a bit out of my comfort zone in terms of that, but it's been awesome. Oh, thank you, Lizzie. Thank you so much. So yeah, any questions at all, you know where I am, and I do hope you've enjoyed today.